Welcome to episode 3 of the Philly Multifamily Podcast. I'm here with Mr. Joe Sutow.
Where's the theme song at?
We're working on it. It's in production.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll get edited in afterwards.
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.
Let's go. Come on. We could not start
Yeah, we have to.
without that.
We have Joe Sutow on the podcast today. Please introduce yourself.
Joe Sutow, used to work at Marcus & Millichap with this fine young gentleman, and excited to be here.
Thank you for coming.
I would say thanks for having me, but you did not make it an option.
I gave you the hard close.
I'm happy you didn't. This is going to be fun.
I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you are too.
Yeah, I actually I brought this journal. It's dated April 4th, 2018. I dug back in my...
Oh my God.
I dug back in my...
I was wondering what that was.
My closet of like old workbooks, and I found all these addresses and details and names of investors and stuff from when we used to work at Marcus.
Anything good in there?
Well, I mean, we were on different teams, but we were calling all the exact same
Yeah, all
people.
the same people.
And, I would call people and be like, oh, Sam just called me. And I'd be like, perfect. You should work with me instead.
Where are the Kim notes?
So I think Kim was before this time.
Different journal or like different era?
Should we give some background on the Kim?
Without like just, completely outing him, we can like...
We'll leave out any addresses.
Yeah.
So Kim was a client, an owner of some real estate up in Northeast Philly, and we called him endlessly because he would engage with us, which is what we wanted, but he would...
Yeah, he was one of the few guys who would just always pick up the phone and talk to us.
Always, no matter what. And so I had a few meetings with him. I went out with Dan Bernard actually to meet with him at the property. We ended up getting very close to listing some of his real estate, but he just, we could not agree on pricing, and part of being an agent is realizing when you believe you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
So we ended up passing on that, and then you came in later, and you could take it from there.
Essentially, like, I think this was probably like a year or two after you initially met with him, right?
I wasn't in the business anymore.
Right. I think I got it listed over the summer of 2021. So like rates had just dropped out of COVID. People were like starting to do deals.
Rates were amazing at that time.
Yeah. And I listed it for like a 5 cap on the button. But like his building was like pretty big. It was 18 units. And I think it was like more than 18,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think you're right. I believe each unit was like over 1,000.
It was big. They were big. They like had these dens that were like not counted as bedrooms, but you could like turn them into bedrooms if you wanted to. And
it wasn't in like the best of areas, but it also was not a terrible area. It just was kind of like a standalone property. It had some like land around it.
It was next to like a shopping center, which is like weird, but
it was unique.
They put a Chick-fil-A in the shopping center. So when I heard that, I was like, this is like what gets the deal sold. Like everyone loves Chick-fil-A.
The first part of the marketing, that was an interest generator for you. Do you want to own real estate with a Chick-fil-A right next
to it? I think so, right? Like
you can expense Chick-fil-A.
You can also just get to eat Chick-fil-A. Like even if like everyone loves Chick-fil-A.
That's right. But yeah, you came in after me. You took my low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
You probably introduced yourself as me.
I did not do that, but I did invite you to the closing dinner. So
we did have some fun with that. I'm happy that you got the business and that you closed that deal.
That was a good one. That was like one of the few which I wish I like maybe looked at purchasing myself, just because like there was like so much value to be added, and it wasn't like a crazy ridiculous price compared to like today's pricing.
Well, that's an interesting thought. What if I ended up being the buyer of your listing on the deal that I almost had listed? That would have been totally full circle. We should have bought it together.
We should have put the competition aside and joined forces to take down the deal ourselves.
Well, what I loved about working with you is like, even though we were on separate teams, I felt like we were like,
we put it together when we were working together, and we would just call him and be like, I don't know if we should share this, but like, we'd be like, hey, happy birthday, you know, like, oh, because you can look all that stuff up, right?
Yeah.
So we'd look up any excuse.
We supported each other and had a lot of fun while we were there.
That's what you have to do, man. Like, it's not that big of a town. You're gonna bump into people, like sooner or later, whether you like it or not.
I remember when you started working at Marcus, and before you started, I was like the new guy for a while.
Yeah.
And I was like the guy grinding, and then you came in and you started like asking all these great questions and grinding. I was like, this is so annoying. I'm supposed to be, and I was kind of like a little probably standoffish at the beginning. I was like, stop asking me questions. I'm focused.
That was when you were doing GSA.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain what GSA is?
Yeah. So my first year and change at Marcus, I was working with Alex Mobin out of the Newport Beach, California office. I was not working in Newport Beach. I was very much so in Philadelphia, and I'd be calling him like the second it turned to 9 o'clock Pacific time. So like my noon, I'm like calling him endlessly. But I had a lot of fun with Mobin. He's a great guy. But GSA is government leased properties, basically. So I'm calling social properties that are owned by investors, but they're leased to Social Security building or Social Security
Post offices, right?
Not so much post offices, USDA, FBI, stuff like that, like the big government agencies.
Yeah.
And they lease a lot of office space throughout the U.S. It's like kind of a product type that you never hear talked about. When I was interviewing, or after I was interviewing, I started working there. Brenton, who was the manager at the time, came to me and told me about this guy out in Newport Beach working on GSA properties. I had no idea what it was.
Sounds super cool and like interesting.
Yeah, it was, and it made it very efficient for me because when I switched over to multifamily, which I eventually did because I wanted to be able to meet with people and physically see the properties, and it just be a more tangible like work experience for me. But one of the downsides to that is like I have to go meet with people and I have to go see the properties. Like when you're calling nationally, your schedule is like totally free. You can just dial. So
yeah.
I had a lot of good traction doing that.
It gets old though, just sitting in an office day after day. Like 1 or 2 days a week, you want to go and touch some bricks.
Well, yeah. Eventually, that's kind of what it came down to and why I switched over.
And now you're rocking and rolling. JS Property Brothers.
We're working on it. JS Property Brothers. Yeah.
How has that transition been from brokerage to the ownership side?
So I'll back up a little bit.
Okay.
So as you know, after GSA, I did another year at Marcus, year or so with the TMT team.
The money team.
The money team. They do multifamily, similar to the team you were on, just a different team.
Yep.
Supposed to be calling different people but it's a lot of overlap. But I enjoyed that. I closed probably like 4 or 5 deals in GSA, probably another like 5 or so deals on the multifamily side. And I eventually realized like I wanted to learn how the companies that I was calling were operating, how they were putting deals together, how they were acquiring them, managing them, etc.
Yeah.
So that eventually I could go out and do it on my own one day. And after I left Marcus, I was interviewing at places, and as I was doing that, my brother, after a little while of me not having as much success as I thought, going to companies and being like, let me be your right-hand man, which like, that's not really a position.
Right.
He was like, why don't you come help me with this thing that I have going on? And then it turned into, why don't we buy this property together? And it kind of just snowballed into what is now JS Property Brothers, which is just my brother and I buying and renovating single family and small multifamily properties.
In what area?
Mostly in Graduate Hospital. Before I started, Jesse was mostly doing stuff in Manayunk and Graduate Hospital. He started because he needed a place to live and renovated a place in Manayunk for him and his friends to work in or live in. And then he had a lot of contractor issues. So he ended up getting he basically said, like, I can do this shit better than half these contractors that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
He went out and got his GC license, and so he started a next project, and it kind of snowballed for him. And then, I came on with my knowledge from Marcus and Millichap of like underwriting deals and talking with some of like the larger developers and seeing how they operated from a distance, and then trying to build up more of a multifamily presence with him.
I realize, he's your brother, you love him. How is it like working with your brother when sometimes you don't
That's a great question, right?
See eye to eye on something?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of positives and negatives, right? And I think the biggest positive is also a negative. You can say whatever you want to your brother, but on the other hand, like, you could say whatever you want, and like that can. So like, it's good that you can be as transparent as possible and say whatever you want, but that can also get you into some trouble and like. But I think overall, it's been like a great experience, and what's best about it is like we had each other's back through everything, and we can trust each other. No matter what. Like, you can have a business partner, like me and you can work together and invest in deals together. And I've known you for a while and I trust you to death, but like,
it takes a while to get up to to that right? Whereas, your brother.
Like, if shit hits the fan with me and you, it could probably turn a lot uglier than, I don't want to say, that's interesting. If shit hits the fan with Jesse and I feel like just us personally, like we have a family that would step in and make sure that like it doesn't get to that point of being like super ugly. If me and you start having some money issues, there's really not that deep family tie that will like make us. It'll probably end up being a bunch of lawyers.
Also, just like you guys have done so many like projects together that even if like something does go haywire, you have so much like history and like other stuff that has been successful. So it's just like expected,
Right.
And that's just part of the business. Like if stuff isn't going wrong during your transaction or construction or planning, like you're not doing it right. Like it's not supposed to be easy by any means.
Yeah, I mean, I think dealing with family in general can sometimes be tricky. Working with family, I've heard horror stories. Luckily, it hasn't turned too sour for us. It's not all rainbows and butterflies all the time, but I think overall it's a great thing. And, he just had his second kid, him and his wife, Jenna. They just had little baby Jones. And so it's really exciting, because he had his first son, Jordan, and now Jones. And so it's like the next generation of brothers. It's really cool to see that.
Right.
Like how close Jesse and I are. And then, obviously they're just little babies, but I can't help but think about like those two growing up and like having they're
gonna have to deal with all these properties eventually, right?
Yeah, hopefully. That would be cool.
A lot more properties.
Oh my God, I don't wish some of these headaches upon them though.
Yeah. Let's talk about your big projects.
Okay. How'd your meeting at L&I go though? Before we dive into that, I think I heard that on last week's podcast. Did you have the meeting yet?
I went, I think, like 4 days in a row, and I got all my rental licenses, which is good, and I got it all sorted. Like a lot of people say a lot of bad things about L&I, but I didn't fill out my paperwork correctly. So I had to like get it straightened out, undo what I did, get some supplemental information, and then like I finally was able to do everything the right way.
I was listening and I was like, oh my God, just hearing the word L&I, like, just like a dagger in the heart. They never make it easy.
I just felt like very used. Like I would just get like passed off from like department to department and be like, every person would tell me to like, oh, I need to come back, bring something else. Like come back tomorrow.
Right, like nobody communicates, and you can't just, that person, like, God forbid they just go back and ask that person a question.
You miss your appointment by 1 minute, you're
Right.
toast. You got to come back the next day.
But they take 2 months to get you an answer, and that's all right.
Yeah.
Ugh. All right,
Let's not talk about this anymore. This is like last thing I want to talk about.
Sorry, I had to follow up.
I did like just like my time accounting of how much time I spent there. And it was like almost 20 hours between like going back and forth, just sitting there, like filling out forms, whatever. Like it's half a work week just to get a piece of paper for something that already exists.
Yeah. Let's move on. Okay, we can't talk about L&I.
All right, let's see what else we got on the agenda. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to start out in real estate investing?
It's a great question. So I wrote down a few things just to, because there's so many things, but I think if I were to go back, I would tell somebody to do what I was trying to do initially, which is go work for another company. Mm-hmm. If you really want to build like a substantial real estate business and grow something large, because every single day I'm learning a different lesson, right?
Yeah.
And like some of those lessons are more expensive than others, and that starts to build and build, and there are times where you like really get beat up in this business. And so I think if you can kind of go have a kind of like a grad school experience where you're getting paid by somebody else to see them make all the mistakes and
Right.
their liability and their dollars on the line. I mean, you should care. If you're working for somebody else, you should care about what you're doing. But I think being able to surround yourself with a bunch of smart people and learn under them before you dive into it. But somebody that maybe just wants to invest on their own, or invest on the side, and they don't really care for it to everything go as smoothly, or they don't care about the speed bumps. I would say something that I didn't do as well as I could have is go join like all the groups, like the BIAs and the for me, the Jewish Federation of Real Estate, and like meet as many people, because as you know, like no matter what line of work you're in this business, it's a relationship business.
Yeah.
So the more people you know, the more sources of like finding a deal, whether you're trying to list a deal or you're trying to buy a deal, the better. And then on the other hand, it's like
You gotta find architects, contractors, bankers,
and you can
insurance
get
people.
a lot of free learning just by talking to different people.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to go work for somebody else. I think it would, maybe benefit you from like a headache perspective. But no matter what, I mean, you talk to any developer, any investor, they all have different headaches and challenges.
Yeah. I think being able to leverage other people, whether it's through like a payroll or just like utilizing their niche, like us as brokers, like so many people just like call us from out of market and be like, where is good to invest in Philadelphia? And like, I'll just get like triggered and go off on them for like 30 minutes, be like, this area is great, this area is booming, this is where all the college kids are, this is where all the post-grad kids live. You have like this neighborhood and that neighborhood, and then I just go on a rant for like 20 minutes, and then at the end they're like, oh wow, like thank you so much, like you really educated us. And then I like never hear from them again. Like they like don't buy anything, but I just like,
you got used and abused.
I don't even realize it, but you do it enough times that it comes back around, and those people like do remember. that you were able to like help them out. So
Yeah.
you always got to give more.
You invest in some real estate as well, right? You got a 4-unit?
I got a 4-unit, and then that was like 2 years ago. And then I bought a triplex and a single family rental like a week and a half ago. So that's
them at the same time?
Same time.
And that's what you were going to get your rental license?
Yes, because all the tenants in those units are PHA tenants.
Okay.
So I had to get my rental licenses updated to give to PHA to be set up as a vendor to collect rent and stuff like that and be in their portal.
What area are those properties in?
So the triplex is at 32nd and Haverford.
Okay.
Which is just north of Drexel University, right?
Is that like Powelton Village area?
It's a little bit north of Powelton Village. It's right by the Spring Garden Street Bridge.
Yeah.
Over to the art museum. And then the house is 36th and Wallace, which is like 4 blocks away. And they're going to put like a 168 unit mixed use development in this huge vacant lot, like across the street from my building.
Oh, wow.
You literally walk across the street and it's like this humongous mixed use project, which they have not broken ground on, but they keep saying they're going to break ground, but you know, I have a long-term horizon. So as long as they build it, I'll be happy.
Right. And so how'd you find those deals? Is it just by calling around to like what you're doing for work and you just find somebody that has something on the side?
I was trying to find some smaller multifamily buildings in West Philadelphia. I had a 4-unit I listed for an old client of mine, and you know, I just called all the comparable inventory and I was like, hey, do you want to buy this new construction 4-unit I have? And he's like, no, actually I want to sell my buildings. So I was like, great. When can I see them?
Yeah.
I showed up, he showed me the buildings. He gave me some info. I came to his office, negotiated. I got seller financing on it. So he owned them outright and he was able to like
Can I change my advice? Because my advice would be a broker, be a real estate.
Why?
Because you have the inside like track to every single deal that just somebody's like, I'd like to sell it, like, but they probably won't end up doing anything with it unless you call them and be like, I would buy it.
Yeah, but a lot of times those conversations, that's just one example. I've probably gone to like...
Well, right, it's a numbers game. That's all of real estate.
Yeah, but you're also not getting, like if you got kids or a family to support, like you can't just be a broker and not make any money.
Yeah.
And luckily I did the same thing with my first deal that I bought. And, you know, I turned the units and that went really well. So I have, you know, like good monthly cash flow coming in.
Yeah.
So like I'm just trying to build out that pipeline so I can keep adding it into the system. But
another thing about being, you know, a broker is you get that cash flow from what you're doing. You can either reinvest that into a deal that maybe you represent a buyer and you're like, let me roll my commission in with you.
Yeah.
Or you can take that commission and go buy a deal. It's like kind of feeding into your side business of investing.
That's the idea, but I haven't invested with a client yet, which is on my to-do, like my goals list for this year. So
you can buy all of my real estate.
Yeah?
Yeah, just take it.
You want to do like rock, paper, scissors at least?
Yeah, whatever you want.
All right. We should do something where like, just like high stakes poker match with like all of our like deeds or something.
I'm going to Vegas next month. You
really?
Come? It's for a bachelor party. I'm sure he'd understand.
Are you going for March Madness?
We will be there doing that, and if Indiana is in March Madness in Vegas, we're buying tickets. But Indiana,
that's going to be incredible.
Indiana
I've never been to
hit or
Vegas.
miss this season.
I've never been.
I've been once before. It's
everyone I tell that to, they're like, really? You haven't been to Vegas? I'm like,
You
this
have a
makes
good
me
time.
like not want to go. If like,
I don't know if it's like a really like it's Vegas. Like not everybody's been there, but I think you'd enjoy it. It's something you definitely don't need to do every year because it's expensive. But it'll be a good time.
I would go, but I just bought these buildings last week. My capital reserves are below a certain threshold, so.
Yeah, well, I only do high stakes poker with my real estate in Vegas. So
Oh, okay.
unfortunately, we can't do it this year.
Damn.
Maybe next year.
Next year,
Yeah.
we'll roll it. We'll put it in the budget for next year.
Exactly.
How do you think the market is right now? Are you buying right now? Are you selling? What are you doing?
The market right now, this is like a funny question.
I'm listening.
The market right now is it's changing. Like, day by day, you see what's going on. But it's been a tough year. In 2023, I don't think is going to be very different. We were talking earlier about the Fed and them raising rates, and you sounded frustrated. But like obviously, there's like a reason behind these rate hikes.
Yeah.
Whether you believe with them or not, they're doing it to stop inflation, and inflation's still sitting up.
Trying to inflate my bank account.
Yeah, we all are. But like the way I look at it is like what they're doing is short term, and I've always been like a long term investor. That's like kind of my mindset. And so like the current market condition, while it affects like my current projects, it doesn't affect so much my like long term goals.
Yeah.
But sorry, to get back to your question, yeah, like interest rates are high and they're fluctuating. They came back down a little bit. They're going back up. I think they'll continue to tick up a little bit, probably through this year and then hopefully come back down. But, and over the past year, construction costs have been really high. So on my end, I'm getting hit on both ends. So like my financing is costing more and the construction is costing more. And so projects make less and less sense. So you asked if I'm buying or selling. I really can't do much of either.
Yeah.
I can't find a deal that makes much sense because I'm underwriting them like so much more strictly. And I can't sell anything because the prices I would have got a year or two ago, I can't get today. So, and those are the out sale numbers that I underwrote to.
Right.
We do have 2 single family homes on 24th and Kimball that we're finally finishing. And we went over, so we we're forced into a corner. We had to go over budget because we wanted to move the projects along, but lumber and everything else was way more expensive. And now prices of homes are coming down. So we're really backed into a corner. I'm hoping we can make some money on these. But the way we renovated them, they were not made to rent.
Right.
So, in real estate, I've asked a lot of people, like, what would you do? Like, would you halt the project and they just say, like, you got to keep moving forward. Like, once a project starts, like, it's kind of hard to stop right in the middle. You're just going to be sitting there on a bunch of sunken costs. So,
interesting.
It's better to just keep them moving, move on to the next project. It sucks. But that's kind of like where the market's at right now.
We're going into the spring market, so hopefully it like picks up. Traditionally, just like, now is listing season, and I think June is the busiest closing month. But
I mean, people like to talk about the Fed and those interest rates.
You can't really control that, so you just have to stick.
You can, and like inflation's still sitting up at like 6 or 7%. And I think that they're gonna keep raising them, whether you like it or not, until inflation comes down to like 2%. And what's the effect of that, right? Like, people are going to be paying less and less because the cost of capital costs more, and in turn, the value of your assets costs less. And until that happens, we're just going to have to sit back and deal with whatever that means. But the cool part about it is that you start to see people starting to sit on a lot of cash and gear up for something. So I think like midway, another like 6 months or so, you're going to see a lot of like people making moves because they're going to be capitalizing on opportunities. And you see like people investing more into industrial, which has been over like the last few years or so. But people are pivoting and evolving their business plans to like meet the market.
I think there's going to be a big correction in just the pricing of land, and I'm sure you've already seen it. Like
We
land,
think like 5 or 10%.
I think that's light, honestly. But
More than that.
I think there's going to be has to be a big correction with all these overlays and just like the cost to build and in terms of labor and materials, like something's got to give.
But there's always that disconnect between buyer and seller, right?
I know, but the gap is closing, but it's not all the way there yet, right?
And so how do you get those sellers to see?
The Fed is doing their job, right? So
Right. The buyer understands it most because they're the one that has to pay for that land. But they're getting ratty out there.
I don't know.
It's Friday afternoon is really seeping in. That's all right.
Should I knock on the thing?
No, that's fine.
All right.
Yeah, so where were we?
We need land to come down.
Yeah. Sellers they're really not, like, unless they need to sell, there's no reason for them to like be like, oh, it's worth less, okay, I'll sell it for less. Like they got a taste of what it could be, and if they can hold it longer, they just will.
Yeah, but then you gotta hope for, feel bad saying this, but you have to hope for like, people are getting older, they have to estate plan, divorces, you can't stop the tax man, like that sort of stuff is gonna have to force sales.
Right, and those are the sellers that like need to sell.
Yeah.
What are it's like death, divorce,
Taxes,
dissolution, debt.
partnership.
It's like the 4 Ds of something. Partnership. Yeah.
Disputes or something like disputes. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's one of the things I picked up from Brenton's training.
Brainwashed. Totally brainwashed.
I'm brainwashed. I'm forever just a robot for Marcus and Village.
Yeah. We have to unprogram our brains.
Yeah. I should come work at Scope, dude. You guys got a good thing going on.
Yeah, we're gonna do a deep dive into this journal, see what else we can dig up from here. That's where all the good leads are.
Partners. Yeah. I got a lot of names in here.
Do you have any questions for me?
I guess you're the one out there talking to everybody. How do you see companies like evolving or adjusting to the market these days?
I would say the amount of people who would sell at a 5 cap is astronomically high right now. So I would say the dynamic is that we're shifting into a buyer's market, if not already there. And just the amount of units coming online is a little bit scary. We've already seen 1 and 2 month concessions given on a lot of leases. And even with those concessions, like if they don't get filled up, like what more can you do?
Right.
And then also, like I'm sure you have a bunch of construction loans that float off the Wall Street Prime or whatever it is, LIBOR. Like it's a lot higher than you probably thought it would be right now.
Yeah.
So Rosenberg talked about like interest reserves getting depleted. That has to like trigger something, in terms of a sale or restructuring and capital calls. So like that's the big elephant in the room that like we got to discuss. But I think you're in a fortunate position where like you don't have to answer to partners or it's your own like private equity, right?
Yeah, and I mean at least for now, but like the goal is to grow at some point. But I think the thing like in the market is like nobody has that crystal ball, right? Like nobody knows what's coming. We're all kind of in that same boat.
Yeah.
People will reach out to you or me and say like, what's going on with the market? But like nobody really knows. If we did, we'd be billionaires.
Yeah.
But Rosenberg, you feel like nobody knows.
The best is when someone calls me and is like, what's my building worth? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, send me a rent roll or something. Like,
sign this exclusive, and I will tell you what it's worth.
yeah, if you, I don't, like, we just do our homework and make our best guess based off that, right? And it's funny, some of the deals we get listed that we think are like overpriced or will sit for a while, will fly off the shelf, and then some of the stuff that we get listed that we're like, oh, this is gonna be so easy to sell, like, sits and like doesn't trade.
Yeah.
So
it's like timing. Like you just need one buyer to.
It doesn't matter what I think, it's what a buyer thinks, right?
The market,
what it's worth to someone else.
The market speaks, right?
Yeah.
Louder than anything else.
I sold a deal 2 months ago where the neighbor ended up being the buyer. Yeah. And he like outbid like I had other people offering on it, he just kept outbidding them, and it was just worth it to him.
I have a great story that reminded me of.
All right, please tell.
May I?
Yes.
Okay. So I was selling a property for a guy who owned like a number of he wasn't like a real estate guy. He had a different business, and I'll try to like keep his identity private, but he owned some real estate assets in some like really good locations in Philly, somewhere in Fishtown. This one in particular was on 16th and Spruce, I want to say. And it was right next to this high rise, or it backed up to this high rise. And I didn't call the owner of that high rise. I'm like, why would they want this? Like, I think it was like a 5 or 6 unit building.
Yeah.
I'm like, why would they want that? So I called literally every other property on the block that were like 5 or 6 units or single family, and just like called everybody, called all the main like smaller tier investors. But this is like a 300 unit apartment building. I'm like, I'm gonna waste their time by calling.
You don't even know who to call. Like there's like so many different layers, and they're probably.
Well, I knew the owner. Like I had his contact information. Oh. That's what we did. That's what I did. That's what you do. Like you know who to call eventually. Yeah. It takes some digging. You don't always get it on the first try, but so I didn't call this guy, and I called him afterwards. I was like, hey, like you probably don't care, like just letting you know, like I sold this property. Like what's going on with your
300 unit?
Yeah, I mean he owns some other stuff. He goes, are you serious? You sold that? I would have paid you double what anybody else would have paid, because I'm trying to. It backs up to my property, and I'm trying to protect this asset. And so,
my God.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? And the seller's like a family friend. I never told him this, but he got a great price. He was happy with the price. He would have been double happy. But like, who would have thought that this owner of it's like a multi-generation real estate company, and he owns this 300 unit building. Like, why would I ever call him?
Yeah.
Hey, do you want this 5 unit? That kind of like, you should call everybody. But you had the neighbor buy. Always call everybody.
Well, that's the lesson, right? Mm-hmm. That's the lesson. But
who knows? I would have called him and he'd have been like,
I'm busy.
No, or he just wouldn't have actually paid double. He could have just been talking out of his ass.
Right. Peak gaslighting right there.
He gaslit me.
He gaslit you.
Before gaslighting was even a thing.
Yeah. Did you lose any sleep over it?
No. That's I mean, yeah, it would have been cool to sell it for more, make the client happier. We sold some stuff for him up in Fishtown too. And the ones up in Fishtown are ones where like, if I was at the point where I'm doing what I'm doing today, I probably would have bought those Fishtown ones. They're like 4 or 5 units each, 2 properties, and they huge value.
The neighborhood isn't what it is now.
No, yeah. It wasn't like nothing, but it was definitely less than what it is now.
Right.
That was a deal we could have gone in on together.
Fuck. Shit.
Neither one of us was making any money at that point.
Yeah, like I didn't have $2 to rub together.
How long did it take you, how many months after starting at Marcus & Millichap till you made your first check? Were you one of those like...
I was the first check getter.
You were the early out of the gate guy?
Yeah, first in our class or whatever, pledge class to get the check.
Who else was in your... You're calling it a pledge class?
Yeah.
Who else was in your class?
Will.
What's up, Will? I know you're watching. I know you're...
Will, we got to get you on when we run out of multifamily guests. Talk about some industrial.
Yeah. You need to take me golfing since you're Your golf course stole my clubs.
Belafonte.
Belafonte. Good energy.
Who else? Brian Sachs. We're just naming names now. There was a couple other guys.
Yeah, nobody knows any of these people,
Yeah,
but this is fun for us.
It's the end of the podcast. We're like almost 40 minutes in.
Nobody's listening.
No one's
anymore.
listening. But yeah, I was first check getter, and then I got one, and then I closed like 2 or 3 deals a couple months later, like back to back, and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. Like, and then I went through like a 9-month like cold spree.
See, I hate you even more after hearing that. It took me like 14 months from the start. Well, I was doing GSA, and I was like much less traction. And like, I'm this kid straight out of school, like calling people about government leased properties. Like, I probably sounded ridiculous to a lot of people. But luckily there weren't a lot of people out there. But yeah, it took me 14 months to get that first paycheck. I remember early on, I had an FBI building in Pennsylvania listed. It was like the first 2 months I got it listed, and like I was on my high horse. I thought I was the man. Like it did not end up like getting any acceptable offers. But I remember Mobin flew out to New York. I met him out in New York. It was my first time meeting him in person, and we went on our first in-person meeting together with this guy. The guy Lee Weiss, or I don't know. Anyways,
Him?
No, not him. But he was like an old guy, and he was like very tough. Mobin and I went out, had a few too many vodka sodas the night before for our like first like meeting. We got a little too excited to meet each other. And I wasn't doing any of the talking in this meeting. I'm this like rookie, and he's coming in as like the closer, because I basically got this guy to be like, come to my office in New York, like
I want to sell it.
Pitch me the deal, like we'll see. Mobin didn't tell me till after the meeting, but like he was like mid like panic attack, like right before we're about to go in. Like he actually went to the bathroom. He was like, I need to go to the bathroom. I didn't know. Like he was not well. Like he was like, because he was just like having like a hangover type of thing.
Yeah.
But
he also probably doesn't meet that many owners like at their property either. Like,
well, he does out in California, because he didn't just do GSA. He did some other stuff. But he's a very good agent, and he still crushed it. Like I had no idea that he was like in rough shape until like he told me like the next day. I'm like, are you kidding me? And we got the deal.
Oh,
it didn't end up closing, but
our job is to get it listed, and like what happens, right?
I miss Mobin.
We'll have to get a road podcast. I'll go to Cali. I'll do like Brendan, Mobin.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably do Zoom too, but yeah, we should go to Cali.
No.
And write it off.
Yeah.
I'm all about the write-offs.
Right. Who writes it off?
It's just written off. It's off. This is good stuff.
This is good. This is fun.
How did you decide to start this podcast?
It's like not much different than like what we do on the daily basis. So I put out 2 so far. We have another one dropping today. And the first 2...
Dropping. I like that.
It drops. First 2, we got 100 downloads and views across podcasts and YouTube. So if each one takes like 40 minutes to do, there's no way I can reach 100 people in an hour by cold calling or emailing or whatever. Mm-hmm. And this is just like way more fun and interesting in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I only do it with people I like and enjoy spending time with. So
I mean, if we were to go out and like grab a beer, like we probably would have had a very similar conversation anyway. We wouldn't have need to go through the Kim story again for the 100th time. But like,
don't worry, we're gonna FaceTime him once we.
Should we? Should we get him on the podcast?
Yeah, let's wrap up. Yeah. How can people find you?
JSPropertybrothers.com.
Do you have a .com? Are you? Okay.
We made one.
I think. What about Instagram?
Personally, JC Sutow. Business, JS Property Brothers. I think
those houses you're selling, they're at. You have them listed.
I also work at OCF as like an agent, mainly just for friends and family, but like also to sell these types of properties that we do. So, Joe at OCFrealty.com if you need some housing advice. But yeah, if you type in 2450 and 52 Kimball Street, you'll see some nice 4-bedroom, 3.5
Plug it,
bath.
baby. Plug it.
Best city views you can get. Come on, let's sell them.
All right, my guy. Thank you. Sorry, Mom. Sorry if you're watching.
It's fake. It's